Hi everyone! Today we're going to talk about the most common title issues that cause delays in closings, and also what are the recommended steps to take prior to listing your home.
Welcome, Angeline.
Thank you so much for having me. My name is Angeline Ahn. I'm with Pacific Coast Title Company, and I'm your local rep here in Irvine. Today we're going to talk about what title insurance is and why do we need it. So I'm going to give a very high-level overview of what title insurance is. Basic terms that we can use is look to it as almost obtaining a history report of your home since you've owned it. So for example, let's say I've owned my home for the last 10 years, and when we pull a preliminary title report on my home, it'll show everything that I've done to it over the last 10 years. Three critical items to look out for is the vesting of the home, and if they're current on their taxes. If they are not, we want to see how much they're delinquent by and what the penalty amount is. And then of course, it'll itemize all of the different liens and encumbrances I have on my home. So let's take, for example, Regina's going to list my home. I'm going to sell it, and she runs a preliminary title report search on my home. So the first thing we want to look at is vesting. We want to make sure that the person you're talking to matches the actual person vested on the property. Now, vesting just means how you took title on your home. So in my case, I am married, so my vesting of the home would be Michael Ahn and Angeline Ahn, husband and wife, as joint tenants. Now, if I were to have a family trust and I placed my home in my family trust, then it would read Michael Ahn and Angeline Ahn, trustees of the Ahn Family Trust, dated January 1st, 2011, or whatever date it was that you created your trust. So you want to make sure that the person you're dealing with is the rightful owner of the home, and that they have the power to convey and to sell the home.
Right.
That's critical, right? We want to make sure we have the right seller.
First step.
Okay, and then the next thing we want to look at are taxes. If they are current on their property taxes, if they are not, how much are they behind, and what the penalty amount is. We want to make sure we bring that current before we can deliver clear title. And lastly, we want to look at all the liens and encumbrances that are on the home. So for example, let's say I have a first mortgage with Wells Fargo Bank for $200,000, and then let's say I applied for a home equity line of credit. Now I know it's a very common thing to do. A lot of people want, access to cash. God forbid an accident were to happen, or if they want to make any improvements to their home, they have immediate access to cash. So let's say I have a $100,000 home equity line of credit, let's say with Bank of America. And those are the two loans I have on my house. Now let's take it one step further. Let's say I re-roofed my home a few years ago, but I wasn't happy with the job, and the contractor said that he would fix some things that he never ended up fixing. Therefore, I never paid him in full. Now, what he has the ability to do is he has the ability to record what we call a mechanics lien on the home, stating that if we were to ever refinance or sell the home, we would have to repay what is owed to him before we would begin receiving any proceeds to the sale or to the refinance of the home. So those are the three most critical things we want to look at. We want to look at the vesting, the taxes, and all the liens and encumbrances owed by the seller.
I think those are important information for both seller and buyer. That's why, like Angeline said, if you're thinking about putting your home on the market, it's always good to ask your listing agent to pull the preliminary report for you, so you can take a look, because you might have many property you forgot this one's owned by husband and wife, the others by trust and all that. So that's the best thing you want to look at. And second thing is that maybe you're so busy you didn't realize you're behind tax payment, or any lien, like the example she just explained. And as far as the buyer's concerned, when you get a title report, you got so many pages, now you know what you're looking for. You want to make sure that those buyer we're dealing with actually own the title. And is any tax payment behind, any liens, but don't worry, if any lien or tax payment behind, and the escrow officer will make sure we bring everything up to date before we can turn it over to you. But you want to make sure on those three aspects you're aware what's the current situation.
Yes, your escrow officer will facilitate all of the items for you. They will go request for demands. They will sort through it and find out exactly how much is owed, so that we can give a final estimate to show what needs to be paid before the seller can receive any proceeds.
Right. Okay. So that's what we can see on the title report. Let's go back to the title insurance, right? So we have those three components. Though, what does title insurance do to protect buyer?
Okay, so how it works is it's actually the opposite of car insurance or medical insurance. Those type of insurances, they are assessing their risk as to when are you going to get sick in the future, or when might you get into a car accident in the future. But with title insurance, it's the exact opposite. We're insuring everything that has already happened. So as long as we do our due diligence and we properly search your property, our risk level is actually fairly low. Now, when we close escrow, that's when we issue the title policy, and that's when the new buyer will be insured. So just to give you an example of a potential claim, let's say during our search in the escrow process, we missed a lien. Let's say they had a third mortgage with their friend Jane Smith and they borrowed $10,000, and we failed to locate that on our preliminary title report. So after we close escrow, Jane was notified or somehow became aware that we've sold the home, yet she wasn't paid. So what would happen is she would file a claim with the title insurance company. We would pay out what is owed to her, but since that loan was still owed by the seller, we would go after the seller and try to recoup our loss.
Got it. I think that's an interesting contrast to different kind of insurance, right? All this auto insurance, everything protect you, the insured from the future.
Yes.
But the titles protect you from the past. If they miss anything, then you're gonna take care of it and go to the right party for the who's responsible for that.
Yes,
right?
for repayment.
So
yes,
got it. Okay. So who is paying for the title insurance?
So typically, in a transaction, the owner's title policy is paid for by the seller. Okay. So in a situation where it's an all-cash transaction where there is no loan, then the owner would pay for the owner's policy paid for by the buyer.
Right.
Now, let's say the buyers are obtaining a loan, then there would be two policies. There would be an owner's policy, then there would be a lender's policy. In that case, the seller would typically pay for the owner's policy, and the buyer would be responsible for the lender's policy.
Yeah, the lender's policy, a lender title policy, because lender has a collateral, has an interest in this. So
they have a huge interest in your home, because typically, for example, if the buyer is putting 20% down and they're obtaining a loan for 80%, technically your lender owns 80% of your home.
Yeah.
Exactly. So they need a lender's policy also, ensuring that they're in first position, meaning if you were to ever refinance or sell, they would be in first position to receive repayment.
Got it. So on the let's say cash offer, only the title insurance, not the lender title insurance, the owner title insurance, how much we're talking about?
So title insurance is basically, it's not calculated by an algorithm or anything like that. We just go off of our fee schedule. So I'll give you an example. For a sale price of $1 million, the title insurance is typically around $2,500. So if your sale price is reduced, then your title insurance will be reduced accordingly. If it's over $1 million, it will be raised accordingly to the sale price of the home.
Got it. All right, next I want to talk about, Angeline, you've been in the business for so long, I'm sure you hear all kinds of story. In order to help us better understand, you explain the concept and theory. Can you tell us what are the most seen title issue that cause delay closing, or even cause a deal to fall apart, which we try to avoid. We want to learn from other people's mistakes.
Okay, so I will say the number one thing you can do to prevent this from happening is during the process, the title company will request a form called the Statement of Information. And all that is it's information about the seller and information about the buyer. On that form, you'll typically see your name, your address, date of birth, driver's license number, social security number, your place of residence for the last 10 years, and also your place of your employment history for the last 10 years. The reason why we need this information and why it's so critical for us to get it up front during the beginning stages of escrow is because we take this information and we cross-reference it with all of the liens and judgments that are out there that are connected to your name. So for example, if your name is David Smith, that would be a very common name, and a lot of judgments and a lot of liens would come back with that same name. Obviously, they don't all belong to our seller, so we need other pieces of information to cross-reference and weed those items out. For example, if there's a lien for a David Smith that is born on January 1st, 1950, and his social security number is 123-45678, but the lien that we have is also David Smith, but birth date is June 25th, 1954, and social security number is 567890. So that's how we know this judgment does not belong to our particular seller. So we can eliminate that. The reason why we need it up front is because certain liens are attached to the property, certain liens are attached to your name. So when we do our preliminary title search, we are only identifying things that are attached to your home. So when we receive the statement of information, now we can go look for everything that's attached to your name that's not necessarily attached to your home. Once we find all of those, then we will add it to our preliminary title report as additional things that may need to be removed by the seller. One common thing is, let's say, a child support lien. Those type of liens are only associated with your name. So if we find that, we will add it to the title report. In some cases, the reason why it causes delays is, let's say they're behind and we need to find out exactly from child support services how much is owed. Now, sometimes that may take days to receive, and sometimes it may take up to 5 days, up to 10 days. And without that release or without having that demand to know how much is owed, that will hold up escrow, because we need to know exactly how much we need to pay before we can close. So that is one thing that we definitely want to avoid before closing escrow, because it may delay. Or there are some cases where, let's say we find a judgment and we find out that the seller is being sued. Nobody wants to close on a home when they're in the middle of a litigation.
Right.
So those are the things we want to avoid.
Got it. Child support and litigation. And for the child support, I think you mentioned that. I just want to highlight that. Even the owner may not be behind the child support, but it requires some kind of report confirmation process to be done in order for us to close on.
Transfer title, correct.
Got it. Okay. Child support, litigation. Anything else? Any other fun story?
Those are the main ones that I can think of that causes the most common delays.
Got it.
One thing I wanted to add is, when you are having these preliminary conversations with your seller and you're getting the home ready to be sold, you'll want to ask them a number of things. You want to ask them if they are currently in bankruptcy, if they've ever filed for bankruptcy, if they are in any litigations, or anything to that nature. You'll want to find out sooner than later, because there are some cases where if they're in bankruptcy, all of their assets are frozen, and you must obtain a court order from the judge in order to be able to sell one of those assets during the bankruptcy period. So that is something that is critical to find out from your seller prior to taking the listing, so you know how to proceed, and you need and to know what documentation we need to obtain in order to be able to sell the home. So if there are any homeowners out there who are interested in selling their home, there's a couple things to keep in mind. If you are currently in bankruptcy or thinking about filing for bankruptcy, or if you are in any type of litigation, you'll want to notify your listing agent up front, because there are certain documents or certain things that we have to do prior to being able to sell the home. For example, if you are in bankruptcy, all of your assets are frozen, and you will need to get a court order by a judge allowing the sale of any of your assets. So you just want to keep that in mind.
One question, when you say litigation, what about for people who are going through divorce? Does that apply to that too?
Going through divorce does not, or it may or may not, I should say. If you are going through a divorce, it depends on how far you are in the period. Now, if you just filed for divorce, clearly you have not received your final divorce decree, so the vesting of your home would still read husband and wife as joint tenants. And then when you do sell your house, we would just take direction of, how much does each party receive. Okay, now let's say husband and wife, and now they've gotten a divorce. and the final decree has been issued, then what we would do is we would obtain a copy of it, and we would need to follow what the decree instructs us to do. If the husband gets most of the proceeds, or if the wife gets a certain amount of proceeds, we will then take direction from the final divorce decree.
Okay, so I want to understand that what are the percentage when things actually come out, that people actually make a claim against the title insurance in your experience?
Well, I haven't really dove in and found the exact statistic for that, but I will say it's probably 5 to 10% of the policies that we do close that a claim were to be filed.
So it can happen,
It
even
can.
though it's not very high percent, but it can happen. When it happens, it involves a lot of money. So
It does.
right?
We're talking
So,
hundreds and thousands of dollars.
Right.
So if you don't have title insurance, what would happen is then the burden of the previous owner's debts
the new
will now,
owner, yeah.
yes, you will now carry those debts.
right,
Yes.
right. Okay. Is there any way I choose not to buy a title insurance?
If it's an all cash purchase, then that is up to the buyer whether they want it or not. But if there is a loan involved, the lender will require title insurance, and a owner's policy will have to be purchased together with that lender's insurance.
Got it. So you have to have both.
Correct.
Owner title insurance and lender title insurance. You can't just say, okay,
Yes.
I just want to buy for the lender portion.
That is correct.
It's both or nothing.
Yes.
And you only have the option when you're a cash buyer, because nobody gonna be on you say, I'm not gonna give you a loan. So if you're willing to take on that risk, cash buyer, then it's all
Then
on
you can do so. Yes.
Got it. Okay. So give us an idea. So when something bad really happened, what does that look like? How much and how long, and what does it look like?
Well, it depends on the amount of the lien, right? It could be 5,000, 10,000, or it could be $1 million. So it's a huge risk that you just don't really want to take unless you have $1 million in cash and you're ready to, rectify your own title insurance claims.
And you have to personally to contact all the related party, right? Chasing the right.
Yes,
But if you have title insurance, then the title company will take care of that.
correct.
Right.
Their legal team will handle it from there.
Okay, so in my experience, I haven't done any transaction without title insurance. So I highly recommend that. This might sound a lot. I will help you navigate through the whole journey and make sure you are well taken care of. If you're interested in title insurance or have any title related questions, contact Angeline on at Pacific Coast Title.
Thank you.